Okay, I've been using a dedicated fist build in Nightreign with Wylder, and it's incredibly fun. I think this is one of the best builds that I've used so far, maybe even the best build, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit. And how it works is I put on the Dormant Power Helps Discover Fists relic, which is a Deep of Night relic that you can get, and it's going to guarantee that you find at least like 4 or 5 different fists throughout the game. But what you really want is the Iron Balls or the Star Fist, because they have the overhead slam with the charged heavy attack, which is incredibly powerful and does a ton of stance breaking. You're basically hitting with like a colossal weapon in terms of the stance breaking every time you hit with this, but it's incredibly fast, so it's something that you can really just spam and doesn't use nearly as much stamina as swinging a colossal weapon. So the way we play this is, we start by hitting the closest point of interest, check all the nearby chests, and kill any red enemies to get a quick fist weapon as soon as possible. We can also check a merchant. He has fists, maybe about a third of the time it seems. And you want to prioritize the ball fists and the star fists, like I said, or any fist with status buildup, so the spiked Castus is pretty good as well. If you get something with Hoarfrost Stomp on a frost weapon, that's really nice, or if you get Lifesteal Fist on a bleed weapon, that's also really good. You can also get the Clinging Bone, which will always have Lifesteal Fist on it. And they adjusted Lifesteal Fist a little bit to actually work on enemies that aren't just small human enemies. It works on enemies like Misbegottens, the Leonine Misbegottens. It works on Crucible Knights as well. And these kind of enemies you can absolutely just stunlock with Lifesteal Fist. So one thing that you can look out for is weapons with buffs, like team buffs, or I guess incantations that buff your weapons, things like that. So Electrify Armament, Poison Armament, because you're not really going to need your FP otherwise, unless you get Hoarfrost Stomp and you want to spam that. But otherwise, there's not a ton of weapon arts that you're going to really want to use a lot of on the fist. So if you get things like Golden Vow, or if you find a Commander Standard with Rallying Standard, or Rallying Cry, or whatever the weapon art's called, you can use that to buff your friends. Golden Vow, you can use that to buff your friends, buff your weapons, use Shared Order, things like that. You're not really going to be using a lot of your own FP, so you might as well become the team buffer, and it's a really good way to contribute to the team when playing with Wylder. So for weapon passives, things that you want to prioritize would be anything that gives you more stance breaking or critical attack power, because you're going to get a ton of critical attacks. But the defensive buffs, especially the successive attacks increase defense and charged attacks increase defense, you're going to be doing a lot of successive attacks and a lot of charged attacks, so your defense is always going to be really high. And talking about pros and cons, the pros are pretty clear here. Really good DPS, really great stance breaking, really high likelihood of getting a status weapon and actually being able to proc the status effect really easily. It's got a really fun moveset, and it's really good for triggering successive attacks, either for the defensive buffs or things like the Winged Sword Insignia or Millicent's Prosthesis. The cons? There's not really a lot of cons here, but you are dependent on finding a fist, which again is really easy if you have the Dormant Power relic. So not really much of an issue there, but is something to take note of. The range is also pretty short on fists, so you're going to whiff on the charged heavy attacks sometimes if you're not careful. The light attacks also don't really have a lot of stance breaking, or sorry, poise breaking, so be careful when you're fighting enemies like knights who might just suddenly poise through your attacks and hit you. Overall, I would definitely call this a meta setup, especially when fighting the Iron Balls or the Star Fist. Doing really heavy stance damage is really valuable against every single boss in the game, and the fast attack speed gives you an easy way to trigger multiple defense passives to keep you alive. Additionally, the fists are really good for reviving teammates too, and triggering the status effects, and I'd really highly recommend this build. The only thing that you need is the Dormant Power Helps Discover Fists relic, and everything else that you put on top of that is just a bonus. So if you've been using fist builds, let me know in the comments how you like it and what kind of tips you have for other people using fist builds or for myself. And if you do end up trying this build, come back and let me know how you've enjoyed it, or if you enjoyed it or how it worked out for you. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.
Well played, good sir. Well played. I thank you.